So let's talk a moment about the construction of a sword. I'm going to use a Rawlings synthetic practice sword as my example, just so I can point things out and talk about how it's constructed. One of the most important features of a blade is this portion right here. It's called the tang. You'll see it in terminology a lot. You'll hear full tang, and what that means is that the blade is one solid piece going all the way through where the handle would be, all the way to the end cap, the pommel. So there are full tang swords that can have different variations, such as this one, as you will see as I construct it. As I put it back together, the cross guard would go on it, the handle will go on it. Right, so there's the grip. And then in this case, because it goes together like this, it has a screw top pommel. Right, so it just screws on. So you'll see that there are, within even functional swords, there are some swords that use a screw-on pommel. We will use this one right behind me here as an example of that. So this sword, the pommel will actually screw off. And so it doesn't mean that it's a bad sword. It just means that that's how it's constructed. And what is important to know about the tang is that the tang can have different variations, and some are better than others, and some are avoided at all cost. So one of the ones that is avoided at all cost is half tang. And what that means is the tang doesn't go actually all the way through the grip. It only goes about halfway, and so it's not a solid piece, which means it could come loose and break very easily. Another thing to avoid is a welded on tang, which means that the blade was made as one piece and they kind of just welded on a bolt, as it were, so they could put it all together, and that's very dangerous. You see that very commonly in SLOs, especially made of stainless steel. It's a way to quickly construct the blade and put it onto a different type of grip very quickly, and it's an avoid at all cost. So when you're looking for a good sword, you want to look for one that has full tang. That's very important. But even within full tang, there are some variations you need to be aware of. Obviously, the screw-on pommel is a good example. Screw-on is not a bad thing as long as the tang is, full and proper and not welded. You will also see a nut version, which is where instead of having the pommel screw on, you actually have a nut that compresses everything together. And I'll speak to that much later in this video. You also then, of course, have glued, which is very dangerous, but also very common. A lot of companies like to just glue all the bits together. Again, this is very common. You'll see this a lot in the SLO wall hanger decorative swords. So you want to be really careful to make sure you're not getting a glued hilt assembly when you're getting the sword. The ideal, in my opinion, always ideal, and I think this is not just my opinion, this is probably fact at this point, is that you want to have a peened pommel. And what that means is that tang goes all the way up through the pommel. It's then heated and beat down like a rivet so that the steel of the blade is all one solid piece that holds the entire hilt assembly together.